today, the plastics industry, as you probably know, is a large industry that has produced a lot of important materials that is responsible for a lot of the well-being of many people across the world. On the other hand, we also have a number of challenges that we need to address. And that means that tomorrow we will need to find alternatives to these materials. And what we typically refer to as the bioeconomy, or the materials that are produced by nature or reproduced by synthetically, are obviously the way forward. Well, if you look at the current paradigm of the plastics industry, let's say, or the petrochemical industry as such, there is not necessarily a drive, and the drive is typically defined by the cost in terms of capex, or the cost in terms of opex, particularly when one needs to invest in new types of material. So we are having a large existing infrastructure that is optimized, and therefore the products that are produced are relatively cheap. So if you want to come up with a new approach, then the challenges of cost are always the drivers for the industry. And obviously, if you have something new, you don't have the efficiency yet necessarily, you don't necessarily have the market size or the scale up, and that means there is a big economic element. Notwithstanding this, it is obviously that we are not necessarily looking at making more money, but we are looking at well-being of the humanity in the future, and therefore we will need to look at the carbon in a very different way, and how to get to this carbon in order to generate materials either in a synthetic way or based on what nature already has provided us. And we need to prove that this is a viable option, and therefore the framework programs and other programs of the European Union are very important to overcome these first hurdles in terms of proof of concept, showing that this is the technology that is proposed is scalable, and therefore enable the economy to become sustainable and to become circular, which is the latter part is obviously very important, to have a circular carbon and not kind of like wasting the carbon as we are currently have been doing for the last so many years after the Industrial Revolution. The key thing to keep in mind is always this circularity. Now, that doesn't mean that there will never be any so-called waste, as we typically refer to it. But these wastes need to be valorized to the extent that it is possible, and there is a lot of opportunity there. So in that sense, as I said, the carbon circle or the carbon circularity needs to be revisited. And this can be via synthetic ways, or can be the way as the proposal and the project that you are working on is doing. And it's just one step. And I think it's a very good step, particularly because you're addressing important materials classes that go into particularly consumer goods, which is a very big challenge to keep these materials that are used in the packaging, in the textiles, in everything that has to do with consumer goods, is important to get into a circular system. And you can call that recycling, you can call that eco-design, that it is easier to recycle, but you also need to look at how can I recover the carbon or the materials as such. And therefore, you will need to engage the consumers, and the consumers need to behave in the way that this comes back to the people that know how to deal with the materials and recover the materials either as a material as such or as the basic chemicals that have been used to produce these materials. And in that sense, I think the proposal and the project that you have going is a very important step to prove that this is a viable option, and this will significantly help to advance the bioeconomy in general, and convince stakeholders that they need to invest more into this type of technologies. Obviously, these technologies are often early stage. Some have already been advanced to a certain level, and this is why, as I already said before, European support is important, but also every support from the stakeholders that are really wanting to ensure that we are getting a sustainable society in the future and contribute in this value chain, which I think is an important element in your program, that you have a complete, a nearly complete circular value chain brought and consortium brought together in order to prove that this is possible also in an economic and a technical, meaningful way.